Yo, what's good? It's your boy South 706. This is KTSC Ave, episode 211 ish. Episode numbers don't matter. It's myself and Marcus Sniffles back at it after both of our teams took losses today, but my team is still leading our division and still playoff battle, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, what's good?
Football is trash. Football is just trash all around. It's not fun and it's not enjoyable. It's just torturous and it ruins your week. It's crazy how like just 3 hours out of your day on a Sunday can just ruin the rest of your week.
See, that's how I know you've never been through nothing. Because as a supporter of the supporter of the Atlanta Falcons fans, or a supporter of the Atlanta Falcons, I'm not a fan. I am a supporter. I've been through enough with this bum ass team that like wins and losses do not affect me anymore. I don't care. Like I'm like, all right, well, they lost. Let's go watch something else on TV. So it is what it is. But again, I'm not super concerned because we're clearly leaps and bounds ahead of any other team in the NFC South. Even with this being a division loss, we're still miles ahead of every other team. And I'm not really too concerned. I guess we'll get straight into the football. So the Atlanta Falcons lost today to the New Orleans Saints after they fired their coach. And for you degenerate gamblers, as me being a former degenerate gambler, got to follow my rules, right? Never bet on the team or never bet against a team that either A, changes the quarterback, or B, fires their head coach. Because that is what the New Orleans Saints did. They fired their head coach, promoted their special teams coach, Dan Rizzler. I don't know who his name is, but he was the head coach today, and they pulled out an astounding 20-17 victory against the Falcons, where I guess newly signed wide receiver Marquez Valdez-Scantling, formerly of the, I think at one point he played for the Chiefs. Let's see. And again, for you degenerate gamblers, if anybody had this ticket, even though it hit, call the number. If you had this ticket in football for gambling, call the number. All right. Let's see. We got what's good, Millhouse? What's up, Purple Wizards? Marquez Valdez-Scantling had 3 targets, 3 receptions for, wait for it, 109 yards and 2 touchdowns.
God damn. That's nasty.
Yes.
Absolutely nasty.
Yes, it was definitely a heinous crime against the Falcons secondary. But yeah, outside of that, I mean, they were pretty quiet in the second half. But it's kind of upsetting. Not upsetting, but it's kind of unfortunate that today Bijan Robinson had, I think, his best game on the ground, probably his best total game as a Falcons. He had 20 rushes for 116 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he had another 28 yards receiving, only for them to lose by 3 points. And the worst part about this loss, that a lot of Falcons fans are now part of the Asian hate movement, is that Younghoe Koo missed not 1, not 2, but 3 kicks. So our guys that are not good at math out there, yes, shout out to the chat. Gambling is bad if you lose. So
Yes.
if you do the math, 3 plus 3 plus 3 equals I'm winning for the Atlanta Falcons, right? So he left 9 points off the board. A lot of the fans are becoming apparently anti-Asian at the moment, and yeah, it is what it is. So we'll bounce back. Shout out to Monkey D. Luffy in the chat. One Piece is GOAT. One Piece is the GOAT. One Piece is the GOAT. Talk to this. Put this man on game. Actually, we're gonna pause. Marcus, he likes to slander the greatness of One Piece. One Piece is goated. Luffy is the GOAT. Luffy is he's him. He's him. Like I don't understand how you can watch one episode and give up on one of the greatest shows of all time. The shit has been on for going on 22 years. 22 years of peak. 22 years of peak.
Run it.
Peak.
Finish.
Peak. Yes. Shout out to Luffy. Yes. Shout out to Elijah. Luffy is the GOAT. Like I was a little skeptical. I didn't like the character design at first because their arms and legs were extremely too long. But I like it now. it grew on me. Like the creator Oda, he is very creative with how he designs his characters, the voice actors, the abilities, all that jazz. It is one thing. I watched all of One Piece. My subscription ended. Go back and read the manga. The manga is slightly different. There's some nuance in the manga. I read and watch it, so when there's parts that like it's kind of slow because they are good at dragging out shit. I'll go ahead and read through some of it. So just to kind of progress so I can try to catch up. But anyways, we shout out to, is this Russia? Shout out to Russia. This is, I'm not gonna say that man's name. Shout out to Russia in the chat. Shout out to the what is it, rubles? Yeah, eat potatoes, vodka.
Oh,
Actually, Russia's kind of lit though. I ain't gonna lie. Like y'all get free. There's a documentary on Netflix talks about like how like in Russia they give you like free housing and stuff like that. It's crazy.
If they got to give you free housing, if they giving you free housing, there's a reason they're giving it to you for free because people don't want to live there. So,
shout out to you from Russia, man. Sub to the chat. Appreciate you tapping in. Definitely support everybody supports us. Let us know what's going on out there in Mother Russia. Anywho, so what were you saying?
I was surprised that Taysom Hill is still a thing out there in New Orleans. Like I thought he would have been kicked out with Sean Payton, but the fact that Taysom Hill is still being run up there as a fullback, as a tight end, or whatever, that man is like a cockroach during an apocalypse. He just will not die and will not go away. So to see that out, like I would kind of occasionally, poke my head up at the TV to see because there's 4 games on at the time. So I would kind of during a break in the game, I'd look over there and I'm like, is that Taysom Hill? Is he still out here? How is he getting away with this? Well, because I don't know. Did
you see the first play of the game?
No.
First play of the game that was called back on a questionable holding call was an 86-yard touchdown run from Taysom Hill. They got called back. His first carry was to the house. Yes, Taysom Hill he's the mayor of Atlanta. Whenever he plays the Falcons, he scores. He didn't score today. I may or may not have bet on that, but that's none of y'all's business. But yeah, whenever he plays the Falcons, usually cash it for him to score.
Yeah, that dude is dead. I didn't know he was him like that. Like apparently he's that guy. I guess it is what it is. But I mean, when it comes to the Colts, we are pretty much a dysfunctional team / franchise. We have no direction, no timeline, and it seems like we don't have a plan. We started out the season saying that Anthony Richardson needs to get reps to get better, and not even halfway through the season, like 5 games in, they're like, all right, well, let's just go ahead and pull the plug on this guy, on a 22-year-old quarterback, and go with the oldest quarterback in the league, or the second oldest quarterback behind Aaron Rodgers. Let's go ahead and start Joe Flacco out there, who I feel like it was a lot of scoreboard watching and looking at stat lines when it came to talking about Joe Flacco last year, because he didn't play that well last year. Like he played better than Deshaun Watson, but the bar for Deshaun Watson is super low. So you really don't have to do that much to be an improvement from that. He's just an old quarterback with a gunslinger's mentality without the gun. He just can't sling it the way that you need to in this NFL. Like for a quarterback that has as much experience as he has and is still throwing interceptions the way that he does is mind-boggling to me. I just don't understand it. And looking at our offense, statistically speaking, we're scoring about the same amount of points as we did with Anthony Richardson. We're producing about the same amount of passing yards, and our running game has gone straight to hell. Like we cannot run the ball effectively or efficiently. Like I know JT had over 100 yards in like the first half, but once they shut that down, it's like, all right, well, now we got to rely on Joe Flacco, and it's disappointing. It's frustrating. It's annoying. And it's like, this game would have been better to watch if the same things, like if Anthony Richardson comes out throws a pick six, has another interception, fumbles the ball, and we lose by, 10 points, you can feel like, all right, well, we can build on certain things and maybe he got better in certain areas and we can use that as a way to improve and develop him as a quarterback. But when you have a 39-year-old quarterback out there, there is no upside here. Joe Flacco is not going to get better. He's not going to improve as a player, as a quarterback, as anything. He's worse than probably what he's ever going to be. So if anything, he's going to continue to decline. And I don't know. Hopefully, at some point, whether it be during the bye week or once we get put out of playoff contention, because that seems to be right around the corner. Because a few weeks ago, we were, I think, like the 6 or 7 seed. And now it seems like we're on the fast track to having a top 5, top 10 pick in the draft. And as someone that watches this team, I can tell you that that's not the kind of team we are. Like, we're for sure a better team than what our record is showing and how we're producing out there. It just doesn't make any sense. So that's pretty much all I got for football. I don't think Breeze had anything else on the Falcons, but we're gonna kind of go and move towards talking about the Grammy nominations came out this past week, and there were a couple of surprises, a couple of, like, I don't want to say well, I guess they were a few snubs, a couple surprises, and maybe a little bit of controversy. One of the positives that came out of the Grammy nominations was Beyonce is now the most Grammy nominated artist like ever. I think she has like 99 or 100 or something like that, which is incredible to think about when you consider where she's at in her career and the kind of music that she's continuing to put out and the level of the music that she's putting out. So I saw a post yesterday that the song that her and Destiny's Child did with Lil Wayne and T.I. came out 20 years ago. And that was her, like, coming to the end of her Destiny's Child stint. So she's pretty much like getting ready to enter into her solo career. And that was 20 years ago. And looking at it now, looking at if you look at maybe the last three or four albums that she's put out with, like, Lemonade, self-titled, Renaissance, and Cowboy Carter, those don't sound like albums made by somebody who is 20 years past going solo as an artist. Like, those albums sound like peak final form. This is the best that she's going to be. Vocals are still peak, production is still peak, writing is still peak, performance is still peak. Everything is still, like, the sliders are still at 99. And you're telling me she's been a solo artist over 20 years now and she still sounds like that? So for someone to have that many Grammy nominations, it only makes sense that it would be an artist like that who has been performing at a high level for over 20 years. And that's not including the stuff she did as a Destiny's Child member. So we're not going to go through all of the, like, nominations in every category. I think we'll go to the rap category first. Let me see if there's like a little. You know what? Shout out to Jazz in the chat. Shout out for the video. Shout out to you. You're the real MVP. We'll go to where is it? I'm trying to find best hip hop and rap section.
I would like to clarify that I do not give a fuck about the Grammys. You can check my tweets. The Grammys is a scam. Shout out to Killer Mike. Campaign for that Grammy. Won it. Nobody gives a fuck. Except Atlanta.
He gives a fuck, though.
He does.
Okay.
That's fine. God bless.
So the nominations for best rap album from this year is We Don't Trust You, Future Metro Boomin, The Death of Slim Shady by Eminem, Alligator Bites Never Heal by Doechii, The Auditorium Volume 1 by Common and Pete Rock, and Might Delete Later by J. Cole. This category is I'm happy with the nominations, and I'm also frustrated with them. I'm only frustrated with one nominee, and that's Jermaine Cole. He does not need to be there. Like you can't do what you did. You can't do what you did. Get the fuck out of here, dog. Don't do what you did. Don't bow out and erase songs off of there and then still submit it for a Grammy. Like, for your consideration, maybe you can give me, I should be rewarded for this. No. If take J. Cole out of there, put Schoolboy Q in there, you could put Vince Staples in there. Rhapsody obviously should have been there. Her not being there is a disgrace, and that's kind of, it is what it is with that. I think Megan Thee Stallion probably should have been nominated also. It was kind of interesting to see that she wasn't nominated at all. Not sure if she submitted her album for the Grammys, but her not being nominated, there's no reason why she wouldn't be nominated. Like, there's no reason why she wouldn't have submitted her project for a Grammy.
Well, that's the thing. You kind of got them headed. There's a lot of people that were like up in arms that Schoolboy Q or Vince Staples or Megan Thee Stallion didn't get put up. But I was like, did they submit their albums? Until we know that, then y'all are just getting mad about nothing.
Well, yeah. Well, here's I guess my thing is, if I had to put money on it, or if I had to guess between Vince Staples and Megan Thee Stallion, which one of these two artists did not submit for Grammy nominate or Grammy consideration? I would bet Vince Staples wouldn't. Like, Vince Staples seems like the kind of artist who's like, I don't want to. Yeah, I'm not going to put in for that. I don't. It is what it is. I don't care about all that other outside validation. I put my music out because, there's a whole, money behind the scenes and whatever. So that would make sense. Megan Thee Stallion, the way that she's like in Amazon commercials, she's in Venom commercials. She's got a documentary out. She put out a 13 song deluxe to her previous album that she put out. Like, Megan Thee Stallion is very out there, very visible. So I don't, there's nothing in my brain that could compute the idea of her and her people and her team doing all this stuff to put her out there and make her so visible, and then not submit that project for a Grammy. Like, that doesn't make sense in my brain. I also saw that going back to Beyonce real quick, that she was also nominated again for album of the year, and that kind of seems to be like the holy grail for her, like the Grammy that she's kind of pushing towards, and like that's the award that people really want her to get. The kind of, I don't want to say validate, but it kind of is like, hey, you want to be recognized amongst your peers as being one of the best and putting out some of the best stuff. And my question at this point, because she hasn't won it yet. She hasn't won album of the year, and a lot of people think she should have won album of the year, and she just hasn't been able to do it. From some like podcasts and stuff that I listen to, a lot of people say it's a business thing. There's a lot of behind the scenes work that has to go behind it. There's a lot of labels posturing, and you got to put money into stuff and pay for things, and that's why certain artists get nominated or win, because of the behind the scenes stuff. It doesn't really have to do so much with the music as much as it has to do with the behind the scenes stuff. My question for Beyonce and her team at this point, it's time to start. Let's put some money behind this. Like, if you can buy the Grammy, then buy it. Just buy it. No one's like, you should have one. Beyonce should have a Grammy for the album of the year at this point in her career. Taylor Swift shouldn't have 4 of those things, or however many she has. It's ridiculous. So if you can buy it, Beyonce, fucking buy it. Like, buy that award. Maybe if it takes you getting shut out of every other category in terms of like song of the year or melodic version or whatever. If they're just like, hey, we can give you album of the year, but you're not going to win anything else, then do it.
Well, I think some of it has to do with maybe, and I'm just speculating, maybe it's a pride thing at her level where she's like, yeah, I know I could buy this, but my music itself should merit me getting it. I think maybe there could be a pride thing with that. And also, side note, I have still not listened to that Beyonce country album. Like, I think it dropped. it dropped around like the K Dot beef, and it just like went away. Like K Dot Drake beef just kind of watched that whole little movement away. This was a strange time for that to come out. I think it kind of the same thing with Tommy Richmond when he dropped, because he was tweeting about it because he's trying to get his numbers up, even though he doesn't want to be hip hop. But yeah, I mean,
he didn't get nominated for anything either.
I wonder if he submitted.
No, he did. But he did. He ain't get nothing though. But outside of like Beyonce and J. Cole, I was really happy to see Doechii get nominated for Best Rap Album and Best New Artist. I don't think she's going to win. Like, she's in a lot of tough categories. Another kind of surprise for me, Cardi B got nominated for Best Performance with Enough, and it's like that's
wait for what?
Enough.
When did that come out?
That came out this year. It probably came out, I think, in like that might have been the earlier ones, but it came out this year. I mean, if you're listening to the podcast right now, in your mind, try to tell me how that song goes, because I'm trying to remember and I have it pulled up here.
I have no clue. That's why I was confused. Like, that's shameful on her part for not putting out like albums for years, but then still kind of want to be in the conversation. Like, nah, dog, get out of here.
And the funny part about that is that when she got the Grammy nomination, she was all like, "Oh wow, I'm getting nominated for a Grammy. Can't wait for y'all to hear this album because it's gonna be fire. Like, if this is getting nominated for a Grammy, I can't wait for y'all to hear the album." And it's like, I don't know about that. Like, I'm not sure if I'm buying that. Let me. Nobody cares. I'm not gonna play a lot of the song, but I'll play like the very beginning to see if anybody even recognizes this song. Like, now I'm starting to get what it was, but this is like a song that doesn't really warrant Grammy nomination for me.
Well, and that kind of plays to my thought process that it's all a scam. Like, you're proving my point. Like, you campaign for it, you submit it, hey, I'll perform if I win. Like, I get it, but to me, that kind of lessens the impact of it. Again, I'm not a musician, I'm not in the music industry, but for y'all that out here that put a lot of weight into Grammys, don't let Grammys dictate who you think is good, great, or otherwise. Because again, Snoop Dogg does not have a Grammy. If I'm not mistaken, Bob Marley does not have a Grammy. There's a whole list of our greats in various genres that do not have Grammys. So just kind of keep that in mind. I've been preaching this on this illustrious podcast for years. Check my records, check my tweets, #scammies.
Well, when it comes to Grammys, I think it's more so about like legacy. You know, it's something that people add on to when you retire, or if you pass, unfortunately, or if you accomplish something, like, how Beyonce is now the most nominated Grammy artist ever. So it's like, when you're looking at someone career-wise or at the end of their career, and it's just another thing to add on to that, where it's just like, oh, well, they have 4 platinum albums, and they have 5 platinum singles, and they have 3 BET awards and 3 Grammys, and it's just another thing. And it's more so, I think people use Grammys kind of the way people use, like, championships or rings or all. It's like, it's just a stat. It's a stat that you can put on someone's. Yeah, it's just another stat that you can put on someone, especially if you're doing like the elite of the elite. If you're, but even then, because it goes back to your point, like, if you're comparing like one of our greats, like, Snoop Dogg, he doesn't have anything, but that doesn't diminish who he is as an artist, or that doesn't diminish his career. So, I guess it's just, when you're talking about like the Michael Jacksons and the Beyoncés and Taylor Swifts, it's like you can kind of use that as a point, or as a bucket, or whatever.
Kind of a smooth transition, talking about the Grammys. One person that had as many Grammy Awards as Beyonce, and also was the second highest Grammy winner of all times, Quincy Delight Jones Jr., RIP. Yeah, he was nominated for. Let me see if this is correct.
Is his middle name Delight for real?
Yes.
Wow.
Shout out
Okay.
Chicago. He had 80 Grammy nominations, only won 28, which to me, again, still proves my point. He is arguably the greatest producer of all time.
Not arguably.
There's probably some white people that will argue with you. Shout out to the Caucasians. But there's people that would argue that he is the greatest producer of all time, and he only has 28. Right? Like that's insane. But again, anybody that would look at him, and no disrespect to Beyonce, and use that as like a judge, like a him versus her type situation, not even close. And that's where I don't take this seriously. So I know a lot of people now. Let me pass away. He passed away, I think, 2 days before election. Let me Google this. Let me get my facts straight. But a lot of people now are. I don't think they're just now giving him his flowers. Like a lot of people have been giving Quincy Jones his flowers. He passed away November 3rd, 2024, at the age of 91. So he lived a very fulfilled life. So shout out to him. But a lot of people are going to give him his flowers. And again, the conversation I want to have is like, if and who is the closest to him, I guess, talent wise, production wise, not to say to replace him, but anybody that would even sniff the trajectory that he has. Also, too, for y'all that didn't watch it, there was a great documentary on Netflix about Quincy Jones that came out, I think, during the pandemic. So definitely tap in with
the person. If I had to select like a producer to be, like, how you're saying, like, who would be the next person to get on that track or on that trajectory to be, no one's going to be the next Quincy Jones, obviously. But if I had to nominate someone or take a guess, I think Pharrell has a shot at that. Just the way that he's able to, like, a lot of people view him and Chad and with the Neptunes as like just strictly as a hip hop producer. But he did a lot of like pop records. He did a lot of R&B records. Like, he's done other genres of music. He's done movie soundtracks, and it's just like without Pharrell, like, we probably don't get solo Justin Timberlake. A lot of people don't really know about like Nelly Furtado and stuff like that, or Britney Spears, and he kind of ventured out in a way that can kind of put you in those conversations as far as like greatest of all time, because that's kind of the things that you need. Like, most people aren't going to put someone, no disrespect, because he's like a top 5 producer in my opinion, but no one's going to mention like Manny Fresh as far as like all-time greatest producers, because he only kind of specialized in one genre of music, whereas Pharrell and like Kanye West kind of branched out a little bit more. But when it comes to Quincy Jones, like, we kind of in the group chat, I know we got into a argument about it maybe a few months ago when we were kind of going back and forth about the NBA Hall of Fame, and I was kind of saying, like, they're just letting anybody in there. Like, anybody can get into the Hall of Fame. You make 3 All-Star games and 1 All-NBA team, you're a Hall of Famer. And it's like, you mean to tell me that this player is in the same Hall of Fame as like Michael Jordan and Tim Duncan and Magic Johnson? Like, Chauncey Billups is in there with those guys? Like, that doesn't add up to me. And I also am pretty strict when it comes to, is this album a classic or not? And a lot of people tend, like, there's the Elliott Wilsons who are like, yeah, Drake has 4 or 5 classic albums. I'm like, bro, what are you talking about?
So like, you pick like the worst episodes to listen to. Like, you have to dismiss some people's opinions with some stuff. Like, again, he is probably one of the most credentialed person in hip hop media. But yeah. I don't know where he's getting that distinction from. That's another conversation for another day.
Well, it's
Take a quick guess how many, as we're talking about Pharrell, and I agree that Pharrell would be the closest to replicating or maybe replacing the void that's left behind by Quincy Jones. But he's got a couple knocks. But like, take a guess how many Grammys Pharrell has won.
I'm gonna say 5.
13.
Okay.
And he's been nominated 39 times.
That's pretty good. I'm not mad at that. 13 that's a good bit. Like, you kind of, obviously you think he probably should have a little bit more, but I think the reason I brought up like the whole classic albums thing is like when certain people pass away or retire, we're very quick to throw like, oh, that person was a legend, or they were one of the greats, or they were one of the goats. And when you put that on just anybody, when an actual legend passes, it kind of diminishes that word, because it's like Quincy Jones, whatever you think about him and what he's accomplished in all of these jobs, like he was like the best in producing music, producing TV, producing movie sound, like all that stuff. He was like one of one. Like, there's no one that you can compare him to. There's no one's career or accolades.
And I think a lot of that's because people don't know anything about him. So again, I highly recommend you go watch that documentary on Netflix. It's called Quincy. There's also a book I have it pretty much just, it's kind of like just the book version of the documentary. It's really good. A lot of great pictures. But just a quick run through from Grammys.com. Born March 14th, 1933 in Chicago, a multifaceted artist as a musician, arranger, and producer. Quincy Jones' first source of prominence as a trumpet player in bands for jazz giants such as Lionel Hampton, Dizzy Gillespie. As a producer and arranger, he worked with artists such as Frank Sinatra, Michael Jackson, Paul Simon, Aretha Franklin, and countless others. He also released albums as solo artist. 1974's Body Heat reached number 6 on the Billboard 200, followed by a string of additional top 20 albums. I wanted to give it a few days, but I have the tweets and I've talked about some podcasts, but that album, Back in the Block, is fucking terrible. R.I.P., but that album is bad. Like, I might have to run back and listen to it, but like, I know my dad played that in the car one day. It was the worst shit I've ever heard. It's just very dated sounding. If you haven't heard it, go check it out on Spotify or wherever you listen to music. But I might run it back with like adult ears. But I remember at the time, like, yo, dog, this is not good. Like, it's very bad. But I guess there are some classic songs in that album. I think Secret Garden's on there. I think there's another Michael Jackson songs on there is really good. But yeah, man, shout out to Thriller, shout out to Off the Wall, all the other hits. The Austin Power theme song. That was sampled in one Ludacris song, Number One Spot. That's Quincy Jones. So that's what I'm saying. So like, I know Pharrell has done some scores. He scored Despicable Me. He scored some other things. He probably scored his new Lego movie. So I think if he continues his path, accolades wise, he could get close. But I mean, again, Quincy Jones was doing it at every level. Like, I'm sure Pharrell is I'm sure he's decent. I would probably say at the keyboard at the very least, but I feel like every producer is by necessity decent at the keyboard. But like, Quincy Jones was a trumpeter. I'm surprised they didn't mention anything about Ray Charles, because that's kind of his origin story, like chasing Ray Charles around and wanting to work with him. But I mean, per his biography, he pretty much had to stop playing the trumpet because he had like an aneurysm, and if he were to continue to play the trumpet, he would die. So that's where he kind of pivoted. Yeah, where he pivoted to doing composing and things of that nature. So
proceeded to be the greatest ever.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Like, it's just a different legacy, a different time,
it's different level. It's different levels. I mean, like if you were to, if I'm trying to think. And I don't want to keep going back to Mannie Fresh, but I'm using Mannie Fresh as an example. Like, if Mannie Fresh was able to put out an album that was not even just Mannie Fresh, if any producer was able to produce an album that was as successful with sales, critical acclaim, Grammy nominations, and wins as Thriller was, they would be in an all-time greats conversation with just that one album. And Quincy
Physical
Jones,
album sales.
yes, like that's one of the like we don't talk about like timeless pieces of music that often, but Thriller is one of those. Thriller is one of those albums that like Thriller came out in I think I don't want to it came out before I was born, right? And that album
I
was
think 1970. Let me see. I think it was 1978. I think, but let me double check. Keep talking.
yeah, so for an album to come out like before, like years before I was born,
I
and
was
then
wrong. 1982.
okay, so that album came out almost 5 years before I was born, right? And for me, that it never felt like that album was old. Like that's one of the first albums that I remember hearing or remember. Like that's my first memory of music is hearing Thriller, and that album came out almost 5 years before I was born, and I probably didn't understand like what music was or what songs were or what I was listening to until maybe like 4 or 5. So we're talking almost 10 years after this album came out. It was still like in the forefront of music and culture. And as
It still is today.
yeah, that's what as
Like
I've
to
grown
this
up,
day.
almost 40 years past that, it's still a song and an album that still resonates today. And you see it all the time where you see like I saw a video of it yesterday where there's like a 2-year-old kid standing in front of the TV watching Michael Jackson. And it's like I know we give a lot of that credit to Michael Jackson because he's in the forefront of that, but that's Quincy Jones like writing and composing and arranging those albums. It's just like you give someone one of those and they're, all-time great. And he had like a handful of those, not including, the Austin Powers theme and all these other like he produced the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Like that's different.
He also produced the Color Purple, I think, as well.
Yeah, like, and it's just like if we were to actually go like line by line of all the things Quincy Jones accomplished throughout his career, we would not slowly, but we would realize like, yo, this guy was in a different category on his own. So, like, it's him. Like for me, when we're talking about like gods in their field, it's like there's Quincy Jones, and it's like everybody else. But like when we're talking about like I guess like artists or performers, I don't know who else there is left that's kind of close to that level. Like you like I think Beyonce's on the track to being like an all-time like generational artist, but like someone like Stevie Wonder, who's put out like the most recognizable songs and most timeless pieces of art ever. Like we don't have a lot of those anymore. There's not a lot of like Stevie Wonders or Smokey Robinson still walking this earth. And it's just like, when Quincy Jones goes, it's like, wow, like these are actual one-on-ones or actual legends. And I just think we gotta kind of be more aware of how we're describing certain artists, with what they're doing and what they're putting out, because everything is not a classic. Everything is not timeless. Everything is, and everybody's not a GOAT. Like the word GOAT used to mean something because at one point it was just like one or two players. It was like, it was either Michael Jordan or, Bill Russell. And now it's like, well, my GOAT is Paul George or Carmelo Anthony or LaMelo Ball. Like, okay, so GOAT doesn't mean anything. For a time, like classic albums used to be, Songs in the Key of Life or Thriller or 1999, like things that were actual classics. Now it's just like Eternal Will Take Two is a classic, or
Okay. Well,
Views is a classic. I'm like, what are we talking about for real? Like, what if I guess my main thing is like, if For All the Dogs is a classic, then everything is a classic. And the word classic doesn't mean anything. It has no value. It holds no weight. So you want to call Might Delete Later a classic? Go ahead. I don't care. Because A classic is nothing now. It doesn't matter.
Well, 2 points to the Michael Jackson Thriller point. There is the movie Sing, the animated movie Sing. They just put out a Sing Thriller special, and then tying back to One Piece, one of the arcs is called Thriller Bark, which involves zombies. And I was watching the anime. I'm like, I know there's going to be some sort of dancing musical part. And guess what? There was a dancing musical part, which I'm like, that has to be a tribute to Thriller. So like, Thriller is it is larger than life. Like again, Thriller has been out for over 40 years and is still relevant today in all kinds of genres. Like it is the Halloween theme song, and it will forever be the Halloween theme song. You know what I'm saying? Like that's how big of an impact it is, and that is kind of a nod to the greatness of Quincy Delight Jones Jr. So R.I.P. to him. But yeah, there's nobody gonna replace him. It's cooked. People don't play instruments too. That's kind of part of the reason. Like there's no musicians. They kind of talked about this on the Joe Budden podcast a little bit too, where it's like, yeah, the idea of like being, I think, no, this might have been Bomani Jones, but like there's no way to make a living as like a musician. Like there's no love for the game. It's like, hey, can I get rich out of this? Or people could just use Pro Tools or sample or like technology is so crazy these days where like it's kind of eliminated the need for musicians. So
It almost makes you think like, the way that technology has kind of advanced to where it is. Like what does Quincy Jones do with the technology that we have now? With the certain I don't know all the technical terms for it, but like the beat machines or
well, I think because he has a background as a composer and arranger, he could probably compose and arrange a lot quicker and maybe to a degree of complexity that would be it would be leaps and bounds over what the average creator producer could do. But again, having that technology, even with AI, kind of like the curve is a little bit quicker to put out something that sounds good enough to put on a record, but it's not good enough to be timeless like Thriller is. So that is a great question. I always wonder that too, like what artists like Prince or Rick James would do with today's modern technology. But again, because those fellows are like actual musicians, to me, they're always going to have a leg up on somebody that doesn't play an instrument. I'm not trying to be, look down on these guys that aren't musicians because it takes incredible talent to be like a Just Blaze or a Kanye West or even a Pharrell. And I'm not saying they're not proficient at an instrument, which I would have to guess to be the keyboard, because again, most producers are somewhat decent at the keyboard. But Quincy Jones' roots was being a trumpeter, like Rick James, a guitar player. Prince played a myriad of instruments. So to me, that'll always give them a leg up in the level of creation they can do. So, but again, band programs going away. Nas tried to tell y'all to say the music, y'all. But
yeah.
Shout out to
Yeah.
Fruity Loops.
Yeah.
And not trying to knock people like what's my dude's name? Lex Luger, who was like the Fruity Loops god back in the day. It takes incredible talent. It takes a lot of hours and work to be proficient on any program. But at the same time, it's not the same as I can pick up an instrument or I can pick up 6 different instruments and kind of do what you're doing and then double back and do it on the computer because because the learning curve is so much easier to produce, but I have the background and the skill set of actually being a musician or being able to read music and things of that nature. So to me, that's very important in this conversation.
When you're able to play, like actually play an instrument, you have a higher floor as far as like where you're starting from. You're starting on second base essentially. Like when it comes to other producers, like they might be able to work a drum machine better than you or move their mouse and do all this other stuff, but at the end of the day, you still have that ear for music and you can actually make it yourself. So, and you can always learn to do that other stuff. You can't learn how to play the drums like Anderson .Paak does. You can't learn to play the piano like Alicia Keys could. Like regular producers aren't able to develop that particular skill at that type of a level. So Yeah, but there's a deeper conversation because I did watch a YouTube video about how people, black people specifically, leaving the church is leaving the church, and music programs being taken out of school is what's hurting R&B singers today, because there's not a lot of, a lot of the legendary R&B singers grew up singing in church or singing at school, and now they're not doing that anymore. So a lot of our singers aren't really singers anymore.
Well, I would even, and that goes back to producers as well. Like one of my homeboys from Augusta back in the day, he was like a drummer in the church, and he was also an incredible keyboard player. Like I was decent, right? Whatever, like of our practice, but like I witnessed this dude like never take a single lesson, but he could literally play anything you could hear in like every single key, and I was like, how was that possible? But he was in the church. He was learning instruments, learning the chord progressions, learning the different melodies or whatever, and like that comes into it. Like DJ Mustard, same thing in the church. Key Wayne, same thing. You can hear in his music. Zaytoven, same thing. So there is a church, the producer pipeline that we are losing, along with other great talented musicians. We just gotta figure out to make it cool. And I think with artists like Thundercat and artists like Kendrick Lamar that value like live instrumentation in their music, I think that is kind of cool where people can see there's an avenue to like actually master their craft. But we just got to keep it going. Like, I mean, put more instruments in the community, like encourage people to do those type of things. So
For sure. But I mean, that comes with, putting money into public schools and stuff like that. But yeah.
well, smooth transition. We just had an election. Donald Trump has been reelected to be the 47th president of the United States. Congrats or thoughts and prayers. I've seen a lot of funny jokes, a lot of funny memes saying that like the White House is going to be registered on the sex offender list. He's going to be the first president with a PO and maybe some side chicks coming through the White House. The first president to have a mugshot. It's just I was thinking about the other night, just all the wild shit that's gone on with that dude for him to still make it to the leader of the free world, not once, but twice. To me, is an incredible feat. It makes him the greatest president of all time, but not for the reasons that you would think. That's my PSA. But what I would say is that a lot of the exit polling has showed that uh, the Republicans have had, or the conservatives, Republicans have found a grip on the Latino community, which is crazy as the president elect has called Latinos rapists, murderers, killers, all those things. And apparently the Latinos here, like, we 100% agree with you. And also, like, yeah, get those guys out of here. We don't want these undocumented immigrants coming over here, even though, America was built on, immigrants. It was called a melting pot, which a better term for that is a salad, right? Because with the melting pot is kind of why we're in this situation right now. Is because we're in a melting pot, everything kind of blends together, and that's what a lot of that's what a lot of what's the word? Uh, what is it? Anglo-Saxon Protestant, like white people do. So like, the Italians, the Irish, Chinese, Hispanic folks, they come over here and kind of abandon their culture and want to assimilate as white. And that's kind of what happened, I think, in this election where, and I know people hate politics, but that's the world we live in. It is what it is. But a lot of these folks, they want to position themselves as white because, I mean, in this country, white people get a privilege that is not afforded to anyone. Even the poorest white person at times thinks that they are better than any insert race, ethnicity, or whatever. So that brings the question. There's been a lot of talk on the interwebs about eliminating the term POC, people of color, because that was kind of used as a blanket as, hey, you know, all us non-white folks are in this together. We need to support each other. But the polls clearly show that they not like us, right? They don't want no part of this equality. They don't want no part of this diversity. They want to get these people out of here. They want to only have two genders. They want to what was the tweet from that gentleman that had his house docked? Your body, my choice. Like that's
Ooh,
a crazy.
that's an
That's a
insane thing to say.
crazy thing to tweet. Even and I thought it was
Jesus.
fake at first, but apparently it's not. He got doxxed. Like they put his address out there. He was like trying to walk it back. But yeah, just that mentality is like, yo, y'all control the free world, and now you want to control like what people do with their bodies. But then you also don't want like big government interference. It's just a lot of nonsense. So I will say I vote in favor of eliminating the term people of color. It's like, yo, dog, it's us and them. Like we might need to create some sort of test or a secret handshake. You'd be like, hey, bro, like you good? And I think like particularly black people have been like this for a little bit because we always have to figure out in mostly white dominated spaces like who we can kind of interact with that has the same like lived experiences as us and kind of can understand what we deal with regarding being loud or being perceived as loud or your passion being looked at as being crazy while somebody else is like, oh, he's a great leader, he's fiery, kind of Aaron Rodgers thing, or just dealing with like general racism and microaggressions. So we've always kind of had to play that game where it's like, hey, we need to kind of feel folks out before we can kind of really let them know how we feel because you never know. Because there are some people that Harriet Tubman would have left behind today that are roaming the earth. So, but yeah, man, defund POC. Let's get POCs out of here. Like it, yeah. I'm rambling.
I mean, POCs can be them, but there needs to be POCs and then black people because, yeah, the only thing POCs and black people have in common is our shared love for black culture. It's like that's the only thing that they care about. They don't care about actual black issues or black lives or black anything. They just want to be able to take the cool stuff that we have and still vote against our best interest and at this point their own best interest the same way that women did or white women did in 2016 by voting for Trump over Hillary. And it's just like,
I mean, they did as well too.
Yeah. So it's some of the conversations.
Did you hear about the
election? Go ahead.
Did you hear about the blue band thing?
I think I'd heard a little bit about it, but go ahead. I no.
So I was talking to Dolphin, shout out to him. And I saw it on TikTok a little bit. I only saw part of it, but I guess like now white women are trying to find a way to identify that they weren't the ones that voted for Trump. Because you look at the numbers, it's like, yo, dog, like it's like 6 out of 10 of y'all. So I guess what the wave was to the first part I heard was get these blue bracelets as kind of a signifier that I'm with y'all. I didn't vote for him type situation. And then I think the other part of that I missed was that they were gonna like shave their heads bald. So what I would say, no. So what I would say, and I thought about this, I was like, that's kind of whack, but I thought about it. If you're that dedicated, white women love their hair. Like they love their long, luscious hair blowing in the wind. If you're dedicated enough to cut off all your hair and get a blue band, I might give you some pound. That's a different level of dedication because you can fake the funk with the blue band, but if you shave your head like G.I. Jane, I'm like, all right, I can bang with you. But also too though, you have to. To me, it's like you got to just know these people. Like, hey, bro, like if you've never been to my house more than a couple times, or I don't know, that's a good question. That's a good question for the people. Like, how do you know you can trust somebody, right? And I'm gonna say, as a black person, let me ISO on me. When do you know you can trust? One of these 60% of white women that might have voted for Trump, which is their right. But like, what is the signifier? Like, when do you know? Like, let me know out there. When do you know when you can trust insert whatever race or ethnicity of people that you may not think have your best interests? Because I have a couple ideas, but I'm curious to think what other people think about this.
I don't even know if it's even worth trying to, I don't want to say it's not worth trying to reach across the aisle or whatnot, but it's like at this point they've shown who they are, like outside of, sexism and racism and the whole transgender thing. I really think that that's like a big issue for people. Like you can, if you're listening to this, you probably watch, you know, the NFL and watch football games, but there's like that one ad where they're like, Kamala Harris wants the transgenders in jail to get surgery, and it's gonna be on your dime. And I felt like that commercial, as dumb as it is, got a lot of people to be like, oh yeah, I don't want to vote for that. I don't want to vote for transgenders to get surgery and it's on my dime and I have to pay for it. I don't want my tax dollars going to that. And like, when you actually look at the actual numbers when it comes to like transgenders, they make up 0.6% of the United States population. Like, there's probably about 1 million of them in the entire country. I just don't understand how that's something that you can. I can't believe that that's one of the pillars that you can run a campaign off of. You know, like I heard on, I think it was either Bomani Jones's podcast or someone else's, but they were saying that there's only 40 transgender athletes in high schools in America, all across America. There's 40 of them. And this is like some big major issue that we need to figure out, and we need to fix the transgenders in high school sports. There's 40 of them. I don't care.
I think what they should have been like is, hey, and for the people listening, people in the chat, do you know a transgender person in real life?
Have you ever met one? Have you ever seen one?
That
would be my question. Have you ever seen one? 0.6, less than 1% of this country is transgenders, and that's one of your main speaking points during your campaign? That doesn't make sense.
And maybe that was on the Democratic side, Kamala Harris' team, for not kind of leaning into that. But I think that they made a good point in the Joe Budden podcast, shout out Joe Budden, is that they were able to tap into people's emotions, right? Because again, in general, Americans are stupid and people don't read, and it's easy to manipulate people if you can get their emotions, right? So that's essentially what they did. They tapped into a kind of a hot button issue that in reality does not affect 99% of the population, but the idea that this is happening was just enough to get people to react in a way that is going to have them vote against their best interest. And it's interesting now, there's been a lot of searches on the word tariff, and I've seen a lot of interesting tweets and articles that people don't understand what tariffs are, and big fucking yikes. I saw one article that said that PlayStations or games might cost like 40% more than they already cost due to potential tariffs. And for y'all that don't know, like, look at some YouTube videos, do your Googles. But an article I'm reading right now, CNBC says Fed's Kashkari says Trump tariffs could reheat inflation if they provoke global trade's tit for tat, because you could put tariffs on other countries and they could turn around and do it to us, right? And let's go educate the people, because this is a educational podcast, right? What is a tariff? So according to Dornife.com, do.usc.edu, essentially what a tariff is, if my internet will let me be great. All right, so a tariff is a tax placed on the good when it crosses national borders. The most common type of import tariff, which goods are brought to the country. There are also export tariffs, which are taxes on goods a country exports, though these are rare. The United States does not allow export tariffs. The Constitution, Article 1, Section 9, forbids them. So essentially, what President-elect Trump wants to do is impose tariffs on other countries, and people are like, yeah, let's do it. So the people that are doing this, and for people listening right now, just take a look around your house and count the amount of things that are probably not made in America, right? I'm looking at my microwave and oven, Samsung. I've had to bet $1. I don't think Samsung is an American company. I'm looking at my refrigerator. That's probably American. I'm looking at my PlayStation and my Xbox. Probably not made in America. I'm looking at my TV. Probably not made in America. you kind of see the trend, right? Like a lot of things that are produced or that are purchased in the United States are easier and cheaper, or the labor to make things, a lot of things that we use is the labor is cheaper overseas. Henceforth, we import those cheap items over here, and then we run the numbers up. So now, what's going to happen is you're going to impose these tariffs in these other countries, and guess who's going to actually suffer and foot the bill? You guessed it, not them, but us.
I think the most annoying part about this election is that it was very much I'm gonna ride for my squad no matter what. Trump says, we're gonna raise the price, we're gonna bombard all these places with tariffs and they're gonna pay for it and it's gonna help the economy. And it's just like when you actually do the research on that, that's not true. None of that stuff that he said is actually true, and none of that stuff is going to help the country. There were studies done by partial, like just basic economists that don't care about, right or left, red or blue, Democrat, Republic. They're just like, hey, here's Donald Trump's economic plan, and here's Kamala's economic plan. They said that, I think it was like 80% of them said Trump's plan is one of the worst plans, and it's going to be disastrous for America. But when you talk to a lot of his hardened supporters, they're just like, well, we'll figure it out. Like they do not care. They do not care what he says. They just look across the aisle and they see a black woman and they're like, I'm not voting for that. I don't care what she says. Even if what she says is better for us and it's going to help us, I don't care because that's my guy. We're going to, I have concepts of a plan. That's good enough for me. He says that Haitians are eating dogs and cats and eating people's pets. I believe him. That dude, he literally, like, it's sad, but it's like that dude could have did anything he wanted. He could have said anything he wanted because he did. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many times he misspoke or rambled on or called somebody the wrong name or quoted Hitler or said some like just madness. And there was nothing that anybody was going to do or that his supporters, there's nothing that he could have done or said that would have cost him the election. Whereas with Kamala Harris, in 100 days seems like a long time, but 100 days is not a long time to run a campaign. Like 100 days is like a little bit over a summer vacation, and that's not enough time to get to galvanize people and to get people get the stink of Biden off of you, and to kind of get a lot of people out there to see what because you got to do so much. You got to get you're cramming. You got to get everything in there so quickly. And you just got this guy saying anything that's not being fact checked whatsoever. You can't keep up with that. She had the standard for her. She had to be perfect in a shorter amount of time than he did. Donald Trump had 4 years to just say anything that he wanted. Anything that happened, he can just come out there and just say, hey, that's the worst thing that's ever happened. I would have fixed that, or I would have did it better. He can just Monday morning quarterback everything. Gas prices are up. I could fix that. I would have did that. When I was president, gas prices were as low as they'd ever been. Oh, there's a war going on over there. Oh, I'd have stopped that war. That war would have been finished with me in charge. I have a plan to stop that war. He's a used car salesman. That's all he is. He's a used car salesman, and he's charismatic to a certain person. I don't find him charismatic at all. But there's a certain group of people that find him extremely charismatic, and they listen to him talk and they believe everything he says when literally nothing he says is true. Nothing.
So Keyshawn, shout out to him in the chat. He said most people vote morally, not economically. An average American isn't really smart enough to vote. I'm not saying that's why the big man won. I would say that is true. Also, if she didn't play identity politics, she could have competed better. And Kamala said she would do anything different from the awesome former President Biden, so she cooked herself. I mean, again, she had to she didn't get really not enough time, and also President-elect Trump has also been campaigning literally since the last election. So, and people bought it, man, and it ties back to what I said earlier about how white people get a different type of privilege. Like this dude has never, outside of being the president, has no experience in any level of government, not even like you're a mayor, governor, president of your kid's PTA. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris is an attorney, went to law school, did all the things,
Worked with all
and
three branches of the government.
and she gets called dumb and unqualified and stupid. But you are a reality TV star, have many failed businesses, have been charged with multiple felonies, has a mugshot. The list goes on and on. But this is what the Americans as a collective chose to run with. And again, honestly, as a collective, we get what we deserve, and hopefully it's not us. I'm not going to say what I was going to say, but hopefully it's not the worst of whatever scenarios I can think in my head. So,
yeah, it's like I said, it's frustrating. It's not surprising, but it is frustrating, and I don't know how people can vote morally for Donald Trump. He has no morals. Like, what morals does he have? Like you said, he has 34 felony convictions. He has been credibly accused and charged and convicted of rape. He's had practices of racism where he wouldn't rent out to Black people. He said racist things about Mexicans, about Puerto Ricans. Like there's nothing moral that you can point to about Donald Trump and say, well, I'm voting for my Christian-based values is why I'm voting for him. He doesn't have any. He just doesn't have anything.
I mean, of course, again, it's kind of full circle. Our first pod episode was about Donald Trump, and here we are many, many years later talking about the same thing. So we will kind of wrap it up on a, I guess, more positive-ish view, I guess. Is that different than the moral views of most Americans, though? Be for real. I mean,
yes, it is. I don't think there's an American that would want to work for someone that's been convicted of a felony, that has been that's had to file for bankruptcy multiple times. That's been like I'm speaking more so like as a Black person. If you told me like, hey, this guy has been sued for racism, he's sexually assaulted people, he's said racial things in public, he's made sexually explicit comments in public, would I want to work for that person? No, and I don't think a lot of people would. And I can prove that to you, because if you look on job applications, it says, have you been convicted of a felony? And if you select yes in that box, you do not get that job. So Americans don't want to employ felons, but they'll vote for one. How does that make sense? That doesn't make any sense.
I'm not gonna okay, the popular vote thing, cool. We're not gonna act like that matters, because when people lose in the popular vote, we don't really factor that in, and we've already established it. The general American public is pretty stupid. I wouldn't even take it to that level of hiring him, right? I wouldn't let him Instacart my groceries, right? Would you let this man babysit your kids? Would you want him to be your kid's school teacher?
No.
You know what I'm saying?
Would you let him give your wife a ride to the airport?
Would you let him mentor your third grade class for bring your insert to work day? And maybe that was something they should have leaned into. But again, people,
it's all fake.
Racism and sexism wins every time.
Every time. Every time. Oh. Jesus Christ, man. And unless you're the perfect candidate, like Obama was the perfect candidate from start to finish. He was perfect. He had all the qualifications. He spoke well. He was qualified. He had the perfect family. Nothing in his background you could look at. Nothing you could say about him. And he was smart and intelligent. All the things. He did everything correctly. Let Obama have done one of the things that Trump did. If he had one of those things in his past, if he had one incident where he, publicly spoke for the execution of innocent people, innocent white people, innocent Mexicans, let him have one incident in his past, he wouldn't have won. That one thing would have disqualified him because he's Black. But because Donald Trump is who he is, he can have all that stuff, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah, well, again, the Democratic Party is going to do some soul searching to figure out what the next move is, because even minus the Joe Biden thing, they were not prepared with a succession plan as the Republicans continue to breed more weird people. But as we wrap, I'm trying to think. I did have a take on like who has the rights to animals. I guess we'll end with that. Like, who gets the rights to like brand animals? And I say that because I watched a lot of YouTube videos of kid stuff from my kid or whatever, and like the way that dinosaurs have been branded to just be the coolest, nicest, happiest animals, when like most of them were like carnivorous and eating other animals, probably in a violent, not fun way. I don't get how they just get to be like cutesy and oh T Rex and his little arms and I love raptors and all the things, but this is like who gets to make that choice? Like, can I just make dinosaur shirts? Like, I don't know. Who gets the rights to that? I'm confused.
Well, if you're okay, are you talking about like branding as far as like selling like
No, I'm saying like
merchandise,
little
or are you
kids,
talking about? Well, are you
just like
talking about
the
like branding as far as like how they're perceived compared to how they actually are? Because I have a big one that needs to be stopped.
yeah, yes, I know. Like, I know where you're going with this, but yeah, same thing. Like, who gets to decide this? Because like, why don't we do this with other violent animals like wolves or what animal? Well, what other like bear? Well, yeah, same with bears. Like, I've seen a picture of a dude's face like almost like literally ripped off because he ran into a bear. But like bears are portrayed in cartoons as cuddly, furry creatures. But like, dog, a brown bear can run 30 miles per hour. Like, that's terrifying.
Bears,
Like, that is
bears can
faster.
bears run fast. They can climb trees and they can swim. Like if a bear sees you, you're cooked. There's nothing you can do. You can't.
Well, you
There's
can
no
make
tree
loud
you can
noises.
climb.
You can make really loud noises. Like when NFL players are running like long touchdowns, they're getting clocked at like 20 miles per hour at top speed, and a bear can do that without any training. Without any training. So,
Just on a whim, just because they're hungry. Get a light jog.
all right. So Keyshawn says it's public domain. So I guess it's just, to me it's always strange that like how animals just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do a whole episode on like kids videos because I have a lot of thoughts. I think a lot of these kids videos are setting kids up for failure, but it is what it is. Like, a small example, there's a video about like these fish getting chased by a shark, and they're talking about the big bad sharky will never catch me. Yes, it will. Matter of fact, it catches the fish a lot of times. You know what
Every
happens
time,
when
bro.
they catch the fish? They chew them and grind them with their sharp teeth, and blood and guts go everywhere. Like, that's real life. Like, the fish aren't getting away. But anywho, that's what I'll end with. Shout out to y'all for supporting. Definitely subscribe on YouTube. Probably getting more music later. Freddie Gibbs has a great project out. I'm still in the Leon Thomas wave. That's pretty much all is my rotation right now. I haven't listened to Eternal Take 2. I haven't heard great things about it. I ran through the West Side Gun stuff, typical West Side Gun stuff. So nothing really to report. But if you haven't listened to Leon Thomas, saying that right, Leon
Thomas.
Thomas, Mutt, check it out. Great album, great vibe. And definitely check out Freddie Gibbs' new project. What is it? You Only Die Twice, I
Only
think.
die once.
You Only Die Once. Shout out to Freddie
I,
Gibbs. Shout out to
I
Gary.
would.
Shout out to
I'd
the GI
recommend.
Soldier. Shout out to Michael Jackson.
I would
Shout out to
recommend Absol Soul Burger.
I got to get to that. I'm gonna get to that at some point. Shout out to the West Coast. All right, this is KTSC Ave, episode 211-ish, titled "Going Back," because we are going back, back to the bullshit. We out. Peace.